Well, did any of your aunts ever date married policemen, is the question.
Yes.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Elmore Leonard podcast. My name is Judd.
I'm Alex Leonard. Thanks for listening.
This is going to be a lot of fun. This episode we are covering the classic novel and what many consider to be, many, not all, and we'll get to that later, consider to be one of the great Elmore adaptations, Out of Sight. This was written, I would say, probably the peak of Elmore's commercial cultural success, mid to late 90s.
Definitely. Get Shorty had come out, so he'd already had kind of bestseller status, but crossing over into Hollywood success. Out of Sight came out the year after Get Shorty hit theaters and was like a massive hit. This was, the two worlds kind of converging, and this was the book he put out. He was 71 when this book came out, too.
Interesting. Well, the first book that we covered on the podcast is Rum Punch. And one of the themes of Rum Punch is Max Cherry is feeling his 57 years of age, and we've got another character who's not just feeling age, but feeling like, and this is something we'll get into, but Jack Foley, the main character, he's 47. He's been in prison for 10 of the last 30 years, but he really, really doesn't want to go back. And the book hit me pretty hard in terms of there's certain parts of it where he talks very plainly and you believe him. I would say in some ways this is a more melancholy book in certain regards. It's a lot of fun. It's very funny. There's a ton of great dialogue, great characters. We'll get into all that, but that was something that struck me rereading it.
Yeah, the central theme of maybe being stuck in your life.
Right. And so it's always fun to think about where Elmore was in his life when he was writing, and this seemed to be he was at one of his peaks when writing this book. And
the peak of the peak, maybe.
He had a few. He had
the different eras have their own ups and downs. But this one I liked because reading Rum Punch recently, the character of Lewis is the same kind of lifelong con that Jack Foley, the main character of this book, is. But we talked at length about how Lewis was kind of chewed up by prison, and it kind of twisted him to be a shell of the man he was.
Yeah.
But Foley seems to have resisted that, and he hates prison and wants to leave, but he still has his humanity. He's a fully different character than Lewis, even though their life paths have been similar.
Yeah, he hangs on to it, but maybe he had to work so hard to hang on to it, and that is what is weighing him down, as we'll see. Not to depress everybody, but sometimes, before we started recording, we were talking about when you revisit something, whether it's a movie or a book. I remember reading this book and thinking it was just pure fun, and now I think it's a much deeper book than I remember, and it was great to reread it.
And it also has the romance. It's kind of Elmore's most romantic book in a way too. So it has a few themes swirling around, even if it's a little fatalistic ultimately. But again, we'll talk about that a little later.
Well, a little bit, but it could have been worse. So,
certainly.
But yeah, we're going to get into all this. Let's dive in. Chapter 1, Foley, our main character, Jack Foley, who we will learn is one of America's most successful bank robbers. He's in jail, and Super Bowl Sunday is coming up. It seems like he's about to snitch on some fellow inmates who are preparing to get out. He sidles up to a prison guard and tells him, that he's got to, keep an eye on a couple of guys who are getting ready to go. But he's not going to tell him everything right away. He teases him and says, later on tonight, there's probably going to be about 6 guys getting out. But he's not going to tell him anything. He just says, just meet me at in the chapel later on. And the guy agrees. And
then this time we've learned that Foley, is 47 years old. He's a habitual offender. And he describes himself. He says, myself, I'm not so much as violent as habitual, liable to pick up on the outside where I left off, so they'll keep me here till I'm an old man. So he's eyeing prison for basically the rest of his life for his history of robbing banks.
Right. And he's in the middle of a 30-year sentence. He's not supposed to get out anytime soon.
His claim is that he's the most prolific bank robber in American history.
Yeah.
But he didn't count how many. But the FBI system has over 200 listed.
Which sounds like a lot.
Yes.
A lot. So they're getting ready to go out. We meet some of the people that are heading out. There's the two inmates who are sort of leading it are a prison couple, Chino and his girlfriend Lulu. They're going out, and Chino was a pro boxer, but Lulu himself, not an unviolent person. He ended a romance with an ex by shooting them 10 times in the head with a machine gun. So right from the get-go, I mean, Foley is a guy he's not violent, but he's not afraid of violence. He's comfortable around people who are violent, and
he knows how to handle himself from his lifetime in prison.
Exactly. So we're not totally sure what's happening, because the first conversation was Foley talking to the prison guard, and now it seems like, okay, he's set these guys up, which is not what a typical central character in an Elmore book does, but we're along for the ride. We're along for the ride. So we do get to meet some of the inmates. We get to know a little bit about the prison, the size of the prison, the structure of the prison, the type of people inside. This is not the place you want to be. And Jack heads over at the right time, he heads over to the chapel. He waits for another inmate to leave. The prison guard shows
named
up.
Elf, who Jack describes as he has short eyes, which is slang for child molester. But that's another Elmore detail. I feel like prisoners would read his books and think, oh, he must have done time. From just a slight mention of the guy, the guy had short eyes, just throwing in some of that prison slang in there.
So he gets back, and it is nighttime, and something is going to happen. And that's when we meet Karen Sisko, who really is, she is certainly as much a central character to the book as Jack. And she's there for work.
Yeah, right behind her, another central character named Buddy pulls up, and this is when we start to learn the kind of full machinations of Foley's plot. Buddy is a good friend of Foley. They had done time together. They'd also robbed banks together.
Yeah.
They had a somewhat a relationship like Frank and Stick, where they would kind of get playful with their bank robberies. Frank and Stick from Swag. Mm-hmm. But we learn that Buddy is involved in a plan to break Foley out of prison. So Foley's been in contact with his ex-wife Adele. He tells Adele that these guys are going to break out of prison, which is Chino and the 5 other gentlemen. And Foley's plan is not to go with them. It is to assault this guard, steal his uniform, and emerge from the escape hole right after the other convicts. And in the confusion and with the police uniform, pass off that he's not one of them and make his separate escape. So he's got Buddy waiting for him, ready to go when he pops out of the hole.
And so Buddy's waiting, Karen's waiting. She's going to be picking someone up, but we get to know her a little bit. First, she calls her boyfriend, another character from Rum Punch, the great Ray Nicolette, who is not as cool in this book as he was in Rum Punch.
We have an update on his life that he's with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement now, which is where his buddy Farron Tyler was in Rum Punch. So he switched departments.
He's switched, and but we also get to know, this is all over the phone, we get to know Karen's dad, Marshall, who
another connection.
He's a private eye.
In Cat Chaser, he has just a private investigation company.
Yeah.
And this is another one of those great Elmore characters where it's like 15 years later, this side character. Well, yeah, now he's the father of a main character in another book.
Yeah, and he's fantastic. He is a lot of fun. He pretty much wins every scene he's in, every chapter he's in. I mean, he's a guy. I don't remember if they ever state his age, but
he's 70.
he's 70, so Elmore's 71, and I mean, Elmore, things were going really well for Elmore, and maybe he identified with Marshall a little bit because that he has so much fun with him, and that dynamic between Marshall and Karen. Marshall, he's got a successful private investigation firm. He's been trying to get Karen to work for him so she doesn't have to do stuff like drive out to a prison. They can do jobs for big corporate clients, nothing as dangerous as what Karen is doing. But it's clear they have a real connection. She really looks up to him. He really respects her. And
the age difference between Marshall and Karen is very close to Elmore with his youngest daughter, Katie.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. If that their dynamic, their relationship reminded you of any of Elmore's relationships with his daughter, your aunt.
Marshall's way more of like a hard case, he's funny and he's got some good lines, but he seems a little more kind of serious and tough. Elmore was very laid back. So I didn't really get a lot of Elmore in Marshall, but I'm sure he took some of the, father-daughter relationship and put it in. But to me, it didn't immediately scream beyond the age difference.
Well, did any of your aunts ever date married policemen is the question.
Yes, my Aunt Katie.
Wait, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us more.
She was with a guy who I think went on to be the head of the Detroit homicide.
Was he married at the time, like Ray Nicolette?
No, not a married guy. But they dated a while. I mean, wow. All right, I'm going to have to go back and ask the family how this lines up. That's actually pretty funny. I hadn't thought about that till right now.
Maybe he was married. No. And I will suddenly have several warrants in Wayne County waiting for me. But we hear a lot about Karen's job and Marshall's life and her relationship troubles. They just have a really great, genuine dynamic. All right, let's get back into the action. So Buddy and Karen are waiting outside. We learn a little bit about Buddy, including his history with Foley and their friendship and their working as well as personal relationship. But also Buddy has a sister who maybe was in Bandits because she's a former nun.
Her name's Regina Mary. No, it's just one of the many former clergy people that populate these books. We might want to do Elmore Leonard bingo, like former boxer, former clergy person, mentions of early times whiskey,
early times bourbon, yeah,
a very specific blues or R&B album or song.
Well, this one, I mean, there was a lot of movie references too.
I go through these books and highlight every movie reference, so I'll have to go back and pull them out, and we can have the master list of every movie that Elmore Leonard has ever referenced in his books. That would be.
There's a lot.
There is a ton. Yeah.
We're waiting outside, and Buddy definitely notices Karen. Not totally clear what she's doing, but he's looking at her, and he's thinking, okay, well, maybe she knows someone who's involved. He's clocking her. He's parked right behind her, and he's curious. He can tell that she's a woman, and she seems like she might be attractive. He's curious about seeing more.
He can see her blonde hair kind of in silhouette because it's night, and his car is right behind her.
Right. So everyone is waiting, and then there is a literal jailbreak.
Yes. So the 6 guys have gone ahead into this hole that they've dug. They've moved up their plan by a few days because the prison is adding another fence that they would then have to tunnel even further. And so inside, Jack is meeting with this prison guard, ostensibly to tell about the prison break, but secretly he's winding up with a 2x4. It's described as he laid the 2x4 smack against the side of Pup's head. And that's a quote from the book I'm reading just because the book, The Big Bounce, opens with another baseball hit to someone's head, which Jack Ryan in that book is described as he laid the bat against the side of Luis Camacho's face. So it's very similar to The Big Bounce.
Well, maybe Jack Foley read The Big Bounce.
I mean, he doesn't seem like much of a reader based on what we know about him. Definitely more of a movie guy.
Yeah, so he knocks him out, and he starts taking off his clothes. He really can just get the hat and the shirt. The pants, there's not enough time, and so he's going to have to just deal with it. And then he jumps down into the muck and makes his escape. And pretty soon, Karen sees someone coming out. She's not really sure what she's seeing because it looks like there's someone kneeling, and then, oh my gosh, there's a guy who is essentially emerging from the ground. They've tunneled out on the other side of the fence. They're right near the cars and the gate, and she starts making a ruckus. She's a federal officer. She's a marshal. She knows what to look out for. She knows this is not what should be happening, and there's no alarms happening. There's no spotlights being thrown around. Nothing. So it's up to Karen. She's trying to get everybody's attention.
But pretty soon they do start to realize that there's been a break.
Oh yeah, and because of her. So chaos does ensue, and soon there's prison guards everywhere. There's lights everywhere. But there's gunshots going off. And in the middle of it is Buddy and Karen, and pretty soon is Jack. Buddy notices that Karen she's armed.
There is an interesting line though where Karen sees the action, she has her gun, and Buddy notices that these convicts are running right by her, but she doesn't shoot.
Right.
Like, she could fully just take these guys out, but I think she wants a little more context, a little more information before she's gunning people down. So I think that's an important distinction for her.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And she also, there's a great little moment too where she's got a handgun, and then she throws it back in the car and gets a shotgun. Now, but everything is happening, and that's when Jack comes out.
He's covered in muck and debris, and he smells, but he's dressed as the prison guard. So it's extra confusing for Karen and the other people around.
Well, and now because there's other guards, running around as well. So it's sort of like, who's doing what, who's on what side. But Jack sees Buddy, and Karen's got the gun, but they're able to get her they're able to grab her. Jack grabs her, Buddy distracts her, Jack grabs her, and they both jump into the trunk of Karen's car, which is not the car Buddy came with. It's not the car Buddy stole, and it's not the car that has all of Jack's things in it that one might need after digging through a tunnel or crawling through a tunnel to escape a prison. So they're in the trunk, and Buddy hits the road.
And this is the kind of central scene of the book that the rest of the plot kind of hinges on it, and that is Jack and Karen in the trunk. We have to buy that they have such unbelievable chemistry that Karen could overcome everything they have going against them, which is that he's a lifelong criminal who's basically kidnapped her.
Temporarily kidnapped her.
The next few pages, when they're in the trunk talking, they really have to work.
They do, and they work great. And I think part of why they work great is because of who these characters are. Karen is not a normal person. She is not a normal, she's in her late 20s. She's an attractive woman, but she's also a marshal. She's been violent. She's, been attacked. She knows how to handle herself. So
she's not afraid is an important point.
Yeah, she's not as afraid as probably the average person. And Jack he's, like you said earlier, he's a habitual offender, but he's not a violent offender. He describes her as a zuzu, which we learn later is a treat, and I'm guessing that's also something that Elmore picked up from some of his friends in prison.
I like that he says it's kind of outdated prison slang, but Foley's been in the system so long that,
Yeah. And also, I think it's important to say that Karen does have, I do think this is something Elmore does really well is, and I'm trying to think of another example, the hot kit. So there are moments where, especially if there's a woman who seems like she might be in danger, because sometimes that can take over the color of the scene. You're missing what the characters are thinking and doing because, oh my gosh, someone's in terrible danger. In The Hot Kid, for example, when we meet Luli, she's hooking up with the infamous criminal Joe Booger Young, and Joe picks her up. He's been in prison, and he wants to sleep with her. And he tells her, but because we know that she's taller than Booger and she has a gun, it doesn't feel like she's in danger. And Karen also has a gun on her. She just can't use it.
Yeah, there's no room for them in the trunk. But she's aware that she has an out if she needs it once the trunk opens.
She has power, and she's just kind of stuck. And it gives him this time one of the things that I think is unique about this dynamic and that this car ride sets up is they're often both thinking the same thing, and we hear that from both of their perspectives. So this idea of a timeout is something that comes up a couple of times in the book, and I'm not sure who thinks about it first in the book, but they both, one of them does earlier and another one does later. This car ride, this trunk ride, is very much a timeout of, in the midst of this prison break, there's this very, very human moment where they're just talking to each other, and they're talking about movies, and she's not forgetting that she's a marshal. She's telling him she's going to arrest him. She's doing her job as best she can. But I totally agree. If this scene doesn't work, the book doesn't work. And I think it works, and I think it works beautifully.
And we do learn more about Jack. He tells about the first time he went down for a crime, which was with his uncle Cully. And Cully is a character who is in the book Bandits. The guy's name is Tom Cullen, which is not, those words are not said in Out of Sight, but he says, my uncle Cully. And when you learn that he was in prison for 27 years, which is the exact time that Tom Cullen in Bandits was in prison, and same from New Orleans. It's familial connection to from Foley to the book Bandits.
Oh, that's fantastic! I did not. Now that you say it,
yeah, that was one I did not realize too. I feel like every time I read these, I find one more. But yeah, the dialogue between Karen and Jack is great. There's a lot of lines that kind of illuminate the rest of the book, where Jack's talking. What if we met under different circumstances and got to talking? I wonder what would happen. And you're saying Karen's still kind of doing her job. She says nothing, and he says, I mean, if you didn't know who I was, you'd tell me, wouldn't you? See, that's what I mean. You're easy to talk to. There isn't any bullshit. You speak your mind. Like, even when she's shutting him down, he's kind of like, that's great. But I think that line, I still think if we met under different circumstances, like in a bar, which kind of sets up later actions.
Yeah. There's no progress made, but just Jack he's still trying to escape prison, but he's just sort of like, oh my God, like, who's this amazing person? And she smells good. She certainly smells better than anybody in the prison. So it's definitely on his mind, but just pretty soon the car stops. And
the second part of their escape plan is coming into view. So it's not just Buddy who's going to help Jack escape. They have a second car waiting from another former convict named Glenn, who Buddy and Foley have nicknamed Studs.
But before that happens, they stop, and Buddy opens up the trunk, and Karen has a gun. She basically tries to arrest them, and they close the trunk on her, and she shoots. So like she's shooting at him through the trunk, and they're just like, now what do we do? So they're meeting Glenn to swap cars and get out of there.
But they've got to deal with Karen now.
They've got to deal with an angry U.S. Marshal in the trunk.
Foley has decided she's coming with them. He doesn't know why, but he says, I'm not finished talking with her.
And this is where I think that, I have to say, as the book goes on, if I'm Buddy, I would get really annoyed with Jack because...
but that's his boy, there's actually this underlying story of friendship where... Buddy's just a really good friend. It's kind of nice.
They're similar in terms of, I would say that they're more competent than, for sure, than Frank and Stick from Swag. But they're also
more genuinely friends. Not just, exactly. They're not just like accomplices, they're friends.
It's nice to see. I don't know if there's not another duo that...
And they're on the same level, you know what I mean? Like... They're kind of back and forth. Like, they see each other certainly as equals. And that's why Glenn to them he's not quite as cool. Like, Glenn can't really hang. But for this job, they need him.
They need him, and he comes in handy. Why not? They're not expecting to have to rely on him as much as they do. So he's meeting them. They stop the car. They are going to, move over, but... Karen starts shooting at him. They lock her back in the trunk, but Jack wants to bring her with. They have to figure this all out.
So he says, Karen, we're going to open the trunk, but Buddy's got a big gun, and you can't shoot both of us, so why don't you just throw the gun down, come with us, so nobody dies.
I can't stop him. He's got a gun, and he's got your shotgun, and he'll shoot you, and I can't stop him. So it's up to you.
So they get Karen out. They walk up a grade to Glenn's car, and then some of my favorite parts are right here, where Karen is in the car with Glenn, and Buddy and Foley are outside, and Buddy says to Foley, I love this part. He says, "You're too late, Jack. You're what you are, clean or dirty. The best either of us can do is look at nice, pretty girls and think, well, if we had done it different." So, like you're saying, Buddy should be annoyed because he sees the situation for what it is, and Foley's kind of in denial. But I think Jack has that kind of nothing to lose attitude where he's like, I broke out of prison. I'm just trying to rewind time, live my life, and this is what I want to do with my potentially limited time out.
Yeah, and there's another great line in there, which comes up a handful of times, and it's what Karen says to Jack, basically when they convince her to look, hand over the gun, and we're gonna get you out, but just don't shoot at us, and we won't kill you.
Yeah,
and she says, "You win, Jack."
Oh yeah, which
she
plays
hands
in his
over the gun.
In the future, he hears it over and over again. You win, Jack. It said that was his favorite.
So now we've got Glenn, we've got Karen, we've got and we do hear that Glenn he kind of looks up to these guys a little bit. That he was a much younger con than they were, and he wasn't necessarily best buddies with them, best friends with them in prison.
And he's kind of a poser. He sees these guys as the cool guys, and he wants kind of part of that.
Yeah, and the kinds of, he was stealing cars. These guys were robbing banks, sometimes using guns, sometimes not. But these guys are robbing banks, and Glenn was stealing cars. He stole a ton of them, but he was stealing cars versus not the same amount of jeopardy involved.
But he does have a record, and we do find out that Karen has met Glenn before.
Yes, but also it's worth mentioning that Glenn is also the reason that they know about Dick Ripley. Richard Ripley, who lives up in sunny Detroit. It's not sunny at all. It's actually the Super Bowl, so it's late January, early February. He tells them about this years ago, when they first met in prison, and there's no specific plan, but it's on Glenn's mind, and maybe these guys can help him. He doesn't know. He also knows another fellow inmate of his, Maurice Miller, Snoopy Miller, also like Chino, a former boxer.
And that's because his old nickname was Mad Dog, and to kind of undermine him, they named him Snoopy, which he hates. But yeah, Glenn learns that there's potentially millions of dollars sitting in a house in Detroit that this kind of white-collar finance crime guy is bragging about. And Glenn tries to escape from prison. He's in kind of a medium security prison, and he tries to walk away to escape. And his line is funny. He says, "You might say I was highly motivated," for why he was trying to get out.
That's fair. That is totally fair. So we're in Florida, everybody. We're at Glades Correctional Facility, and so that's where Jack's doing time. That's where his ex-wife lives. This is where Buddy and Glenn have migrated to for various reasons. So we're in Florida. So when they do show up, we understand what it is that they're ultimately trying to do.
Yeah, we know the next score, and it makes more sense why Glenn is around, since he has info on this big hit that they're going to do.
Yeah. So they keep him around. Maybe they'll work with him, maybe not. But at the very least, they know he can get them a car.
We have all this info, but then we're back with Buddy and Jack. Buddy and Jack are outside the car. Jack's changing clothes, and he's saying that he wants to keep Karen around. He doesn't know why. But inside, Karen has realized that she not only has seen Glenn before, but she's transported him as a marshal. So she knows his history, and she reveals it to him and kind of freaks him out.
So Buddy and Jack are trying to, sort of figure out the plan. Buddy's sort of like, well, why, why are we taking her? Why are we bringing her? How does she fit into all this? And while they're working it out, Glenn and Karen are chit-chatting, and Karen basically makes the case, look, you haven't really done anything yet, and so you should let me go. Let's get out of here. You let me go. And she's never along for the ride. She is always, she's always trying to get done what she thinks needs to happen.
I mean, she's also just tricking him. I mean, yeah, he hasn't physically transported these escaped cons, but he is in a stolen car.
He is in a stolen car, but if she puts in a good word, it's better than what might happen otherwise.
So Jack and Buddy are outside talking, and they just see the car speed off, Glenn and Karen, and it is described as, it says, Glenn and Karen drive off until they were out of sight down the turnpike. We get the kind of titular line in there.
So Karen wakes up in the hospital, and we learn that Glenn starts freaking out, and she's trying to get Glenn to do what she wants, and he starts flipping out, and they struggle over the wheel, and there's a crash, and she gets a concussion. She wakes up. She's in the hospital.
The film version adds, this is one of the first editions in the adaptation, where there's kind of a dream sequence where Karen's thinking about Jack, which I think is a great addition to the movie, because the book we have, people's thoughts. You can say, Jack was thinking about her, Karen kept thinking about this line, but that's way harder to convey in a film. So I think it's actually, it was great hearing in your interview with Scott Frank, where he's like, I hate dream sequences, but this one makes sense. And I think it extra makes sense because she's concussed. It's not just like, oh, I was having a nap and thinking. It's like, oh, I had a traumatic head injury, and when I came to, like I was in a dream world. So I think that one really works.
Yeah, there were a handful of those because they're around each other. And in the book, it does work really well because they do have a lot of moments where they're in close physical proximity, but neither of them can have a conversation. They're both in their own tracks. Karen's not able to stop doing what she wants to do as a marshal to talk to him, and he can't stop doing what he's doing as a bank robber who's escaped as a prison escapee trying to get out of town. So there's moments where they see each other, and there is some kind of interaction, but there's no conversation. And
it's way more internalized.
Yeah. So in the movie, that it definitely helped. And so Karen wakes up in the hospital, and we meet some of the other men in her life. Her dad, Marshall, is there. Ray Nicolette shows up with some flowers, but he can't stay long. And some of Karen's colleagues, Daniel Burden, who is with the FBI, and also someone, Milt, I believe, from who is her supervisor in the Marshal Service. It's very clear Milt is sort of an old school cop, and he trusts Karen. He likes Karen. Daniel is he's just a real career-driven guy, and is always looking for an opportunity to make himself look better, and that means, well, maybe putting down Karen or maybe blaming Karen for something. And he's very skeptical of her story. And there is some reason for him to be skeptical, as we learn in this chapter, is that Karen dated someone named Carl Tillman, who was also a bank robber. And
it's referenced in this book as kind of filled in backstory, but it does exist as a short story called Karen Makes Out that Elmore had written before this book for a what was it, for a short story collection. To Elmore, that was kind of like a tryout. He'd seen a photo of a U.S. Marshal, which I think you've mentioned before on the show, named Ann Garza.
Ann Garza, yeah.
And she's just kind of standing in a short skirt with a big gun on her hip. And Elmore's reaction upon seeing that was, she's a book. So, but before she was a book, he tried her out in a short story, which is Karen starts dating this guy, Carl Tillman. She basically finds out that he's like one of the suspects for these serial bank robbings. Marshall's his advice to her was basically, well, if you want to find out if he did it, ask him, see how he responds. So
Right.
the short story, she asks him, she realizes that he's the guy, and she takes him down. But in the book version now, we find out that it is kind of interesting that she has a history with a bank robber. And now she spent some time we don't know how she really feels about Jack, but she definitely had a rapport with him. So and with Ray, who's kind of a jerk, Ray Nicolette, we're seeing her dating history as slightly suspect, which is important to the book.
It's not great. It's not great. But she did shoot the last bank robber that she had a relationship with. So eventually, her colleagues, leave. They leave her alone. This is just a really great moment. Karen tells her dad, she suggests, "Hey, how about I come stay with you for a few days, and we can get some quality time together." He knows that she just wants him to help her out with the investigation.
Yes.
He's like, "What? You just want me to do work for you for free?" And she says, "You're my dad."
Well, she's right. I mean, he's right and she's right, because her plan works.
They're both right.
And
They're both
there
right.
is a mention of computer whiz Greg, and that's Greg with 3 G's, which is a reference to computer whiz Greg Sutter, Elmore's researcher.
That's right. That's right. So Karen is going to try to figure out what's happened to Jack, to Buddy, to Glenn, even though she's supposed to be recuperating. Jack, we have a great scene, and it's repurposed as the opening scene in the movie.
One of the great bank robbery scenes in, I think, movie history and in book history. And you can tell that Scott Frank and Soderbergh liked it so much because they took it from the center of the book to the start of the movie.
Yeah, and in the book, he heads to a bank, and he basically just very calmly, very casually tells the teller that a person sitting down with her bank manager is actually his partner and is going to shoot him in the face if the bank teller doesn't fill up a bag with 50s and 100s and maybe a couple of 20s. And she complies. He's a gentleman. He's nice. He's reassuring the entire time. And he walks right out with almost $4,000 in cash.
And he's got his fake accomplice still sitting there as kind of insurance to give him more time to escape. It's really effortless and so great. I mean, but he's got Buddy waiting for him in a getaway car outside.
Right. And unlike in the movie, which sets up how he ended up in prison one of these times, they get away just fine. And now they need to figure out what they're going to do.
And Jack is already starting to think about Karen. And I like the description he said he pictured Karen. He says those pictures of her kept popping into his head, and he would take his time looking at them. Like a simple 1-sentence description is like, all right, he's smitten.
He totally is. He totally is. But they have some other things to deal with in Florida still, and one of them is Chino, who escaped, and whether or not he might be going. There's a concern that Chino might think that Jack basically gave up the plan, and Jack is why they got caught. And so they want to check on Adele.
Because, Jack realizes he mentioned his wife. Yeah, he mentioned his ex-wife, Adele. So to make sure that she's not in danger, he's like, I got to make sure everything's good.
Right. We got to make sure that she's okay. So that slows them down, a little bit.
I do like that Chino, before he heads to Adele's, is hanging out at the Cafe Cuba Libre, though.
Yes. Chino's an interesting character because we first meet him and he seems like he's an okay guy. And then we hear the story about how he ended up in prison. Buddy reminds him, Chino hacked a guy to death with a machete. And Jack's response is, he was in a bind.
This is also classic Elmore, though, because another author you'd think would use Chino as like the bad guy who's going to circle back around and try to get Jack or something.
Yeah.
But out of his sight, that's not what happens.
I love the way that we get to know him, because at first he seems like, well, he's like Jack and Buddy. He's a criminal, but he's a likable guy. But as we spend more time with him, he is a nasty guy. He sets up his ex. He's sort of living in a little bit of he's hanging out in a slum. There's news articles about the prison escape, and there's reward money. And so he tells someone who he's hanging out with, who he knows a little bit, in this little shanty town, which is mainly people who recently made it over from Cuba and have nowhere else to go, and so they kind of build up this little town in the middle of nowhere where they can just kind of hide out with some safety. And so he tells someone there about Lulu, and essentially says, "Hey, you should call the cops and get this guy arrested and get the reward money." As it turns out, this guy says, "Well, look, yes, I want 10,000, but why not 20,000?" So he calls the cops and he tells them about both of them. And Chino evades the cops. Lulu doesn't and gets killed. But Chino's waiting for him. He figures out what happened, that he had been turned in as well, and shoots the guy. And he's justified in doing it. Maybe not justified is not the right word, but he's got a reason for doing it.
Yes.
But it just shows like how quickly Chino will kill somebody. And
he has a nice line that kind of relates to Foley as well, where he says, "His life was coming to this because of countless reasons, all beyond his control," which
right.
seems typical for this kind of con who's like, well, you escaped from prison and all of your friends died. I think some of them aren't beyond your control.
So Chino is somebody we need to keep an eye on, and we do want to keep away from Adele, who we don't know that well, but still, we get why Jack wants to do that.
But Adele is Jack's ex-wife. We should just talk about her briefly. She is a magician's assistant ex-magician's assistant. The magician she worked for, Emile the Amazing, and she said, "Emile says I'm too old." And Jack says, "To do what? Watch pigeons fly out of a hat?"
So we're still in Florida, and there's a nice moment where Karen is hanging out at her dad's, and Ray comes over, and we hear a little bit of the backstory from Marshall's life and also Karen's life. Ray's coming over, and he's like, "Gosh, it was really hard to, actually find the door with all the greenery, all the plants." Apparently, and so Karen's mom had passed away about 10 years before from cancer, and she had kept all the shrubs and the greenery and the vines. This is, tropical jungle Florida. She'd kept it all in check, and Marshall just never did that. He never wanted to do it, and so his house, it sounds like it's a very, very nice house, but it's just covered up in green. And I thought that was a nice touch. Ray comes over in his full work outfit to say hello, and he's a nice enough guy, but Marshall doesn't want his daughter dating a married man. And
remember we mentioned in Rum Punch that like the curious kind of half chapter with it's like Ray got back together with his ex-wife. I think that at the time you read it and you're like, oh, that's so funny that the end of this book we just find out what happens with Ray. So I really appreciate that we pick up where, all right, they didn't really stay together. They gave it a go, and now he's out dating.
They're probably not going to make it, but Marshall doesn't want Karen to be in that situation where she's just, waiting on someone else to get their act together. We learn that Marshall has a history of telling her dates, her boyfriends, what he thinks of them, and that, and so he definitely has some fun with him, and it's a great little moment. So we've got a lot of people who need to head towards Adele's. Jack and Buddy want to make sure that she's okay. Chino wants to figure out how to get in touch with Jack or use her to get back at Jack. And Karen also wants to talk to Adele and see what she knows about all this. So they're all converging. They're all heading over there.
Oh, I would like to point out there is a pretty big thing for me here. In that conversation with Marshall, he mentions Stockholm Syndrome to Karen, which is the famous, prisoner sympathizing with the captor. And
falling in love with the captor.
They have a brief conversation. Yeah, they said her dad says the bank robbery in Stockholm. Two guys, one of them's name I can't think of it, and Karen says Olofsson. And he says, you know what I'm talking about. They're trapped in the bank. Three of the women come out. They say they're in love with this Olofsson. This is one of those things that I'd always heard. Stockholm Syndrome is like, well, our understanding of it isn't kind of accurate to the history. And so I went and read this book called
Oh no.
6 Days in August, because I read a bunch of articles online, and they're like, yeah, it's a bank robbery, this and this happened, and a few years later, one of the captors had a romantic relationship with one of the guys, and I was like, okay, like more information, please. I couldn't find anything. Like, I was reading article after article, and none of them mentioned anything like that. So I had to go to a giant nonfiction book to find out. Let me give you a brief rundown here.
Yeah,
basically,
give us a rundown.
Okay, I promise it relates somehow.
No.
So, Stockholm Syndrome, it basically started as a bank robbery. An ex-con named Olson shows up at a bank with a gun, shoots a bullet in the air, shoots a police officer in the hand, and takes 3 women hostage. And eventually they find out there's a man who's been hiding in the area they are, so he has 4 hostages. He talks to the police and makes his demands, which are an exorbitant amount of money, a getaway car. But one of the things he asks for is a convict who is currently in prison named Olofsson, Clark Olofsson. He wants him taken from prison and put in this bank. So Olofsson at this time already is kind of famous throughout Sweden as like a young, good-looking outlaw thief, kind of. He's young, he's in his 20s, but he already has like a giant rap sheet. But somehow the police say, sure. So they take this famous criminal and they say to him, we want you to help us. You'll be our inside man. If you can end this, we'll commute part of your sentence. And they take him and they put him in this prison. They're in this prison they're in this bank for 6 days. Olofsson is kind of the intermediary. Like, he becomes friends with a lot of these women. He is keeping the situation kind of like calm. But the women and the male hostage, they start to fear the police because the bank robber is very clear. He's like, I'll shoot these people if you do X, Y, and Z. I'll shoot them. If you try to bust in here, stray bullets could hit them. And so the people just start to fear the police because they're not listening. And one of the captors even has a conversation with the prime minister, and she's like, why don't you just give these guys what they want? Like, you're endangering our lives by prolonging this. Like, they're going to get, more upset. Just give them the money, give them the getaway car. Like, they want 2 of the hostages to drive away with them. Like, we'll do it. That's fine. Like, this is absurd. Basically, the cops are just delaying. They're not doing anything. Tensions are getting high. And the plan is they're going to drill in. By this point, they're in the vault of the bank. They kept getting kind of pushed back, and now the people are all in this vault. And the cops are drilling holes in the ceiling. And to keep the drills cool, they're pouring water down the holes. So water is gushing into this vault, and it's filling up. And so at this point, it is above their feet. And everybody is kind of like losing their mind because they're in the vault. They have like no real concept of like day or night.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, all I was thinking of reading this was like, man, if Elmore was alive, like, I would give him this book. Like, this kind of thing. Like, all the real details are so insane. Like, even some of the details are like so Elmore. Like, Olofsson is humming killing me softly throughout this. Like, multiple of the captives are saying like, yeah, he would be singing like cool songs. They pump tear gas through these holes. The police bust in. All of the captives are saying, no, like, all right, we have to, like, they've barricaded themselves with these like metal filing cabinets. They have to pull down the filing cabinets. But the captives are all saying like, we'll go first, because if the crooks go first, the cops will just shoot them. Like, any excuse they have to like unload a bunch of guns in here, we could be killed in the crossfire. So they're doing everything they can. This is interpreted as like that they love the bank robber and his friend. And this is really not that, like, this was huge front page news in Sweden and, was known throughout the rest of the world. This is like a big deal, this whole case. But it really wasn't until Patty Hearst, the Patty Hearst trial, that her lawyer, F. Lee Bailey, used this, and specifically, he said Stockholm Syndrome as I tried to use it as precedent by saying, like, my client, this has happened before. Look, these people in Sweden were brainwashed, when in actuality their case was pretty different. But the thing that it relates, somehow it is circled around from being not accurately described and out of sight to somehow being true to life, is that one of the captives named Kristen and Mark, who was the one who spoke to the prime minister. I'm going to read a section from the book really quick. She said, or it says, for months after her rescue, Kristen had found herself thinking about Clark Olofsson. She missed him and wondered how he was doing now that he was back in prison. By summer of 74, they started to exchange letters. First, it was about general subjects, though over time the contents became more intimate and explicit. Then, somehow, they meet up when he has a day off to prepare like legal briefings. They meet for lunch, but then they take a train, and it says they checked into a small hotel near the train station. She felt like she was living in a thriller as she climbed the stairs to the room with the country's most notorious outlaw. And then, quote, we threw off our clothes and set about doing everything that had been prohibited to us for so long.
Yeah.
So they basically have a timeout.
Yeah.
And with this most famous bank robber in Sweden, she has like one night with him. I couldn't believe it as I was reading this. I swear to you, I was like, this is absurd. How
was
close
he?
this is.
I mean, that actually happened when Elmore was alive. So I mean, was he riffing on
It
that?
wasn't known. It's weird that like the real history was kind of obscured. Like that Elmore just referencing Olofsson. It's like, well, yeah, but he's not really the bank robber. He's the accomplice. And
Right.
Originally they added more time to his sentence because the police were like, no, he didn't help us, but he had an appeal and got it overturned, and so no time was added to his sentence. I mean, he really wouldn't have been there, except the police tried to pull some insane move.
They're tough on bank robbers in Sweden. So everybody listening, be careful if you're in Stockholm. No, that is great because it is both Karen and Jack they're very aware that they're thinking about each other a lot. And so that conversation, and she and Marshall are having about Stockholm Syndrome it's part of what she's thinking about. It's on her mind. There's another little bit in there.
But they basically refute it, though, where she's like, no, it's not that similar. She's like, it's not that.
Well, sure. She could say that however she wants, however many times that she wants. But interesting things are happening. There's still a lot of similarities. There's a fun little bit that I got a kick out of where Marshall is described as looking just like Walter Matthau, and that he was in the middle of a case, and someone he was surveilling got away because two women ran up to him saying, "Oh my God, it's Walter Matthau," which I thought was really funny. I worked with Walter's son Charlie, who directed Freaky Deaky, and we're looking forward to having him on before too long. I'm sure he got a kick out of that just like I did. So we got to get to Adele. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Well, to relate it back to the question or the scene we were talking about, Marshall says, if you want to find out if he's a good guy, ask his ex-wife. So that's exactly what Karen's going to do.
Which is hilarious because even though Marshall is saying, what are you doing? This guy broke out of prison. This is not going to end well. What are you doing? But if you're interested, go talk to his ex-wife. And it's great. So Karen heads over. Jack and Buddy are heading over.
Jack wants to make sure that Adele's fine, like we said earlier, because Chino is also heading there.
Right. And apparently Adele is looking for work, and she's been handing out flyers, trying to get herself some work as an experienced magician's assistant, experienced with doves and all forms of legerdemain. So she's been handing out, she lives sort of near the Cuban area, and this is very much a Florida and Detroit book. Elmore is known for his work in Detroit,
Kind of a
obviously.
first half, second half. We got first half Florida, second half Detroit.
Yeah, it's just a fun touch to it. They're very different places, obviously, but it all flows. It all all makes sense. I really got a kick out of it. But Adele is trying to get her a new job. She's handing out flyers with her phone number on it. She gets a call from Manuel, the magician, which we know is Chino, and he's trying to basically arrange a meeting with her. He's saying he wants to interview her for a job. He's saying, hey, I can just come over to you. Don't you want me to do that? She says, no. I'll meet you somewhere. I'll meet you in an hour. In a public place, not at my house. Adele, this doesn't strike Adele as strange that it's like, hi, I'd like to hire you. Can I come over to your house? You would think that someone is savvy, someone who had lived with a bank robber would have a little more street smarts about her, but she doesn't seem to. But that's okay.
That's another connection, actually, is the
Cardozo
locations. They talk about the Cardozo, which is in multiple books. We got like La Brava and Rum Punch.
Yeah.
And Get Shorty.
Oh, interesting.
Just for the brief moments, the brief Florida moments of Get Shorty, he even throws some of those connections in.
Oh, God bless. So Adele is got a date in an hour or so. Someone else calls, hangs up. We presume that this is Buddy trying to see if she's home. So they're on the way over too. Foley and Buddy are, they're aware of their situation. Foley is aware, he's seen in the newspapers his mug shot, the pictures of him. So he makes sure to dress nothing like that, and he's in his old man Miami gear, tropical flowery shirt, and I think shorts and sandals and black socks.
I do like the line that Buddy says though when he drops him off. He says, "It's 11:20. I'll be back here in a half hour at 10 to 12. You don't show, I'll be back here at 12:20. You still don't show, I'll see you in 30 years." He's like, "Got your back." Basically, after that, you're going down.
And Jack is totally cool with it. And so he's getting close to the building, and he sees a woman. He sees a woman and, dressed kind of casually, wearing jeans and pink heels, and sort of grabs the eye. And he thinks it's her, and it is. And she just doesn't really clock him. She asks him for change, for a parking.
Because he looks so different.
Right. And he just says sorry and keeps walking. And he's telling himself, he told himself if he looked back, he'd be turned into a convict on the spot in state blue. So don't even think of looking back. You saw her again, and that's it. All you get. Because this whole time he's been saying he just wants to see her again. But now that he does, well, maybe he wants more.
He thinks maybe that's it, like, I've seen her.
Yeah.
I can't tempt fate.
Yeah.
Let me get out of here.
Right. So he walks on, and Karen heads over.
Yeah, so Karen goes over to Adele's apartment and introduces herself.
Right, and then but Buddy and Jack, they've been talking about going up north, going to Detroit, trying to figure out, because they don't know where Glenn is, and so that means either Glenn's with the cops or Glenn went to go do his job up north, and they're thinking more and more that Glenn is up north. So they've been talking about going up to Detroit for a while, but they haven't yet. And one of the things that after Jack has this moment with Karen on the street, and that I think maybe it's Buddy who points it out. It's like, look, if Karen would have caught you with Adele could have gone to prison. So it's not just you. You could have really messed up Adele's life. So he's like, you know what? I can't do that. I want to help her. I don't want Chino to bug her, but I also can't get her arrested. So they decide officially to go. And so they start making their arrangements to go to Detroit, and Jack kind of gives Buddy a way out, you don't have to do this. And Buddy's like, no, let's go. So they're going to go do that. Adele and Karen are chatting first at the door, and then eventually Adele lets her in, and they're just chatting. They're just, Karen is kind of just talking to her. I think she says it, she phrases it, they're just talking girl to girl. Adele asks him about what was, being in the trunk of the car. He didn't try anything, did he? And did I come up? And all their relationship, and it's just a fun way to get to know Jack. But also, Karen is not just looking for clues about how to track him down. She's looking for clues like Marshall asked her to, like Marshall told her to, in terms of finding out, is he a good guy? Turns out, yeah, seems like a pretty good guy.
While they're chatting, there's a knock at the door, and it's our old buddy Chino.
Karen sort of hangs back. Chino is sort of pretending to be looking for a new assistant, and then drops it and says he's looking for Jack Foley. Karen gets her gun, basically like tells Adele, like, get out of the way, get out of the way. Chino comes in and he's got a gun. Karen's ready and she's not intimidated, she's not afraid. Adele's sort of frozen, doesn't know what to do. Karen basically puts her gun right in Chino's face and doesn't break eye contact. She's not intimidated at all, and she arrests him, or she puts him in cuffs. But Karen was there only to find out if Jack was a good guy. But now that she's found Chino, she has a great idea, and she calls up Daniel Burden from the FBI. Says she'd like to make a deal. If she can find someone on one of the escapees, if she can find Chino, can she be on this task force? And she relates the story later on to her dad, and he's impressed that she made this deal after she had already caught the guy.
And it's a good time too, because the task force is kind of right on the tail of Jack and Buddy. Because Jack and Buddy are going to stop at their temporary apartment to pick up a couple things before they head north. I love Buddy's line where he says, it's pretty here, isn't it? If you like looking at views. This is just one of the great lines in the book. But, yeah, the FBI is closing in on this place. Jack and Buddy are gone but returning. And we have one of these scenes where you get multiple perspectives, where the FBI is about to bust down this door, and you have Foley and Buddy are returning, and they go to the parking garage, and then they are going to take the elevator up to the floor that they're on. Burden has asked Karen to sit in the lobby to get a positive ID on Foley if he should come in, but to not make herself known.
So Karen's waiting in the lobby, and we know that Jack and Buddy, we don't know if they're there or not, but we know they're heading there to get ready to go up. But on the way, they did a little shopping, and they didn't like the first store, so they go to a second store. We learned that Jack, what he's really looking for, they're there. Jack is saying they need to go there and get some winter clothes, but what Jack is really looking for is a suit, in case he ever gets to see or meet Karen again. He does. He picks up a suit and some other things, and they're heading back. And, they're in the elevator. They're in the elevator,
the doors open, and in this kind of moment that's frozen, Karen sees Jack, kind of can't believe her eyes. They make eye contact, and he gives her a little wave. And the doors close. Jack and Buddy know they got to get the hell out of there. And Jack says, I saw her. I waved at her. He can't believe it's happened. But at the same time, he got lucky. They were seconds away from getting busted, so they kind of haul ass up to Detroit, and that sets up the second half of the book.
Jack and Buddy get to Detroit. Karen has to figure out a way up there, but we know she's going to go do it. The FBI finds out that they're in Detroit because Buddy is always calling his sister the former nun.
So we've got Karen, Buddy, Jack, and then we also kind of rejoin up with our old buddy Glenn.
Yes.
And Jack and Buddy were correct that Glenn has made his way up north, and he is trying to follow through on his plan. In the meantime, he's recruited his old buddy Snoopy Miller. So we get the scene of Glenn driving around Detroit with Snoopy and Snoopy's friend, White Boy Bob.
There's Maurice and White Boy Bob, who is sort of a protege of
but we learn his criminal history, that he did a breaking and entering and left his wallet at the scene. But it's told as if, like, this guy knows what he's doing. Look at his history. And Glenn right away is like, well, why am I with these guys? They're bragging about a crime where he left his wallet at the scene.
From basically the minute that they're there, Glenn realizes he's made a bad mistake of trying to work with these guys. And he's stolen a car. They're driving around a fancy neighborhood.
They head to Kronk Gym because Snoopy's an ex-boxer. And Kronk Gym is like the most famous gym in all of Detroit. It's where Tommy Hearns trained. And there is an Elmore connection there because the famous trainer Emmanuel Stewart, the guy who was basically put Kronk on the map, was the uncle of Elmore's step-granddaughter Tiffany. So his daughter Jane remarried, and Jane's husband Gary had a daughter, Tiffany, and Tiffany's uncle was Emanuel Stewart.
Well, there you go. Two local legends. One family.
Crunk Jim was famous for being like super hot. That was one of the secrets that Emanuel Stewart would crank the heat up so that all these guys working out and punching stuff would be like physically drained to prepare them for their fights.
Yeah, to help with their stamina and
it's another place that the original location was, burned in a mysterious arson, which is like a very Detroit thing to have happened. So at the time, 96, original building would have, still been there.
When did it burn down?
Now, I believe it was 2012, something like that.
Well, we hope everybody's okay. Glenn realizes that not only are these bad guys to be with, but basically like Snoopy's in charge.
Yeah, he's getting kind of edged out of his own. He's the one who brought the deal, and he's kind of like realizing that he's not the main guy anymore. That he's been
Right.
getting replaced.
He's going to be part of it, and maybe he gets something out of it, but it's not the $5 million score that he was hoping for and planning on. In the meantime, Karen gets to town and runs into a reporter.
The reporter's like, has met her before, and she's like, Karen Cisco, what are you doing in town? So to fill up space in the paper, she tells her editor, hey, we got this marshal in town. Run this cool photo of her. The article will write itself, basically.
Yeah, and so they do, which is a fun little, it's a fun reference to how Elmore first was inspired to come up with this character.
Yeah, they're describing the exact photo that Elmore himself saw.
But it's also how Jack will subsequently know that Karen is in town, which is a good thing.
We find out that Jack has been calling around hotels looking for a Miss Cisco.
So Glenn has hooked up with Snoopy and is not really sure how to get out of it. Jack and Buddy, they, based on all the things that they've heard from Glenn, what they know about Snoopy, they go to the gym and they sort of check him out right away. There's tension between Snoopy and Buddy and White Boy Bob and Buddy. And Jack as well, and they have to figure this all out.
But Snoopy says to them, you want to talk, come to the fights Wednesday night. We'll sit down and look at it good. So they kind of leave it at that they're not fully sure how the plan's going to go down, but, they'll talk about it another night. Immediately, Buddy says, you notice it's supposed to be Glenn's deal, but now it looks like he's working for Snoop. So Buddy has already understood the whole situation within 1 minute.
Yeah, they've got to figure that out. And Karen is trying to figure out where Glenn could be. She doesn't know much about Snoopy, but where Glenn could be, maybe where Jack could be. And she tracks down Snoopy's ex-wife, Moselle, who we meet, and she's terrific because she's like Karen. She does not have the best taste in men, but at least none of Karen's exes got blown up.
Moselle says, I was with a man before Maurice. I knew his business. I knew everything he did, a beautiful young man, and it was like looking in the future, seeing how it would come to an end, and sure enough it did. He got blown up. So that's a reference to Freaky Deaky, but also when she says it's like looking in the future, she's like, it's like all these characters saying like, I can see what my life is going to be. If I keep doing the same thing, it's not going to end well. So she's yet another character who's on that same wavelength.
Karen meets Moselle, but also Moselle's brother, Kenneth, who is a real dirtbag. And he tells Moselle to go away so he could try to make a move on Karen, and he is not
a forceful move. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's just a disgusting pig. But Karen takes care of herself. Karen's got she's armed. She's got a little, I'm not sure what to call it, the little extending tire iron thing,
little baton thing. Yeah.
The baton, the extending baton. She smacks him around and puts him in his place and gets out of there. We learn that Kenneth is just not somebody that you want to be around.
He's a bad dude.
He's a bad dude. But in the meantime, Buddy and Jack are getting ready for Wednesday night. Jack wants to go get some shoes. And Jack also makes it clear to Buddy that he is not going back to prison. He's just not going to do it. And, Buddy accepts it. He appreciates it. He doesn't. This is sort of a moment where I think that their friendship really is so clear. These are tough guys. These are guys who do tough, dangerous things, and Jack's being just really open and honest and vulnerable with them, and it's a great moment.
Mm-hmm.
Karen has the night off. Karen is on the roof, or not the roof. Karen is at the top floor of the Renaissance Center, and the hotel is in the Renaissance Center. Is that right?
Yes. It's a giant hotel.
Yeah.
This is, I believe, the tallest building in the Detroit skyline at this point.
And so it's the Westin Hotel, and she's all alone, and she
gets approached by some annoying ad guys, which, Elmore was a former ad man himself, but did not think too favorably of the profession.
Well, let's get more specific, because from what I know a little bit about your dad's career in advertising, Peter Leonard's career in advertising, he had the Hiram Walker account for a little while. Is that not correct?
He did. And not only that, the line that is in this chapter for the margarita mix, you don't need no stinking bartender, was from my father's ad agency. So that's very funny to me that...
it's fantastic.
I asked
Do you
Peter
think
about
Elmore...
So I asked Peter about it, and he said that, they pitched this, and, everybody loved it, and then somehow a client had talked to somebody, a family member, and came back and said, we can't do that. It's too rude, or something. Like somebody was like, after the fact was like, no, we have to do something else. So I do like that Elmore's like, well, hey, it's not gone forever. Here, look, I'll put it in the book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think he liked the line, or because he's having fun with these characters who are not as cool as Jack, that he's like, this is a terrible line?
My father and grandfather, both ad guys, would tell me my whole life, don't go into advertising.
How'd that work out?
Well, I went into advertising, but just briefly. I mean, it was a funny period where I was working for Ford, and I'd come back to my father's house for dinner, and Elmore would come over, and we'd kind of commiserate. Where I think that they thought it was fun. Sometimes it's a job. Like sometimes you'd come up with a good line, and it was like, oh yeah, you did great. But I think to both of them, that's all it was. It was just a good line, or it's a good campaign, and that it wasn't. Some ad guys kind of really buy the hype and think of it as like art, or more important than what it is. And I think it's really important that they instilled in me that at the end of the day, you're just trying to sell stuff, and no matter how good it is, that's all it is. So have your own thing going. Do your own artistic pursuits. So. And
you all did, which is great. I did not get great advice from my grandfather, the drapery salesman, but we'll cover that on another podcast.
Yeah, we'll have to do like 5 episodes since
we're gonna catch up on Al. Al Rubin has lots of good stories. No novels, but lots of good stories.
So Karen, though, is listening to these ad guys who she just has no patience for. They're so annoying, but she gets rescued in a way by a mysterious man who walks in.
She thinks it is another ad guy, but she looks up, and it's Jack. And it's Jack in a suit, and they're alone at the top of this rotating restaurant, and
it's a beautiful snowy night.
It's their time out.
And they have some, they reference kind of their earlier conversations. I like when Jack says, "You lied to me, didn't you? You said nothing would have happened." And Karen says, "Maybe that's when I started thinking about it." Which I think is perfect.
I mean, this is one of the things, and Elmore is not, he's certainly not the only writer to do it, but he does it a lot, and we talked a little bit about this in Ombre, where there are just so many types of conversations that in a normal life you wouldn't have an opportunity to have. But this is a situation where it's a very real conversation, it's a very natural conversation, but it's completely unique because the situation is completely unique. And it's a great moment between both of them. There's an extended, sequence here, and you really want to, like when you're reading it, you also want to take time and slow down, and just savor.
And it is separated. I mean, Elmore, I think, even knew that, because in the book it is separated. We have them meeting at the bar. Then there's the chapter where Glenn, Kenneth, Snoopy, and White Boy Bob.
Things go bad.
go to a house and do some really bad stuff, and then we follow
Yeah.
back up with Karen's hotel room where the timeout continues.
Right. They're trying to figure it all out, and they make sweet love, and then they have a little fight, and then they try to figure out all of the things that they're going to do. Can they ever see each other again? He actually says he loves her, which is pretty surprising. And for me, I'm thinking about, like, is this something that he would, if he really thought he was going to see her again, would he say it? If he really thought that he wasn't going to get himself killed in a shootout or in a robbery gone wrong, would he say that? And so when he says that, it's, obviously it's a nice sentimental thing to say, and I believe him, but also, why is he saying it now? And they go back to sleep, and she wakes up, and he's gone, and he doesn't leave flowers, he doesn't leave a note, but he left something even more special to her, her Sig Sauer, that he,
Her favorite gun.
Her favorite gun. So it's a really sweet moment between these two tough, hardened.
And I love after when he's talking to Buddy,
yeah,
when Foley goes back to Buddy and he says, "You told me on the highway it was too late, to have a regular life. I know that. I still wanted to know what might have happened if things were different." Buddy says, "You find out?" Foley said, "Yeah, I did," not sounding happy about it.
right.
So I think they're both realistic about what's going on and what just happened, but they had to do it anyway. They know it's not going to last.
Yeah. Now Wednesday night, and they're going to go meet Snoopy and Glenn and White Boy Bob at the fights, to talk about everything.
This is another. I've seen so many shows at this venue, like the State Theater. It's very cool that
Yeah.
I didn't really know until this book that they did boxing matches there. But I mean, Detroit was a pretty wild place in the '90s. But it's very cool to think of this place I've been to a million times was also like doing like small prize fights.
Yeah.
It's part of, like,
has Proto Martyr ever played there?
No, I mean, I saw like Arctic Monkeys there. It's pretty big.
Oh, cool. So they have to figure it all out, and the guys have to figure out, okay, what exactly is this scam? Glenn is there alone, and Glenn, the more he, now he's witnessed these guys at work and how violent they are and how cruel they are.
He's witnessed a couple murders. He's witnessed Kenneth.
He's witnessed a couple murders. Kenneth
assault
Kenneth
someone.
raped somebody. I mean, like, it's just awful.
I liked Mosell's line to Glenn though, because when they came back from the house, he's basically like dead behind the eyes, and she says, "Baby, you with the bad boys now?"
Right? Yeah.
She's like, "Yeah, you had a smile on your face before you went, and now you don't."
Yeah, these guys are terrible. So Glenn is trying to figure out he just wants to go. He doesn't have his car keys. White Boy Bob has the car keys. He figures out, well, I stole the car once. I've stolen hundreds of cars. I could probably steal this one again. If not, I don't know, but he's got to go. He's heading out, and he's trying to steal the car he already stole, and he runs into Karen. She knows about this. Another great character from other Elmore books who shows up here is Ray Cruz from City Primeval.
Yeah, main character is City Primeval.
And they don't interact too much, but he tells her
that was a cool
about
thing
this.
about the adaptation about Out of Sight. The guy who plays Ray Cruz in Out of Sight reprised his role in the Justified City Primeval
in
adaptation.
Justified. Yeah.
Weirdly, that guy, when I was in middle school, when they were filming that movie, he spoke. There was an assembly, and he came and spoke to us. The guy who played Ray
cool.
Cruz.
That was the amazing Paul Calderon.
It's just as like, here's an actor who's filming in the area.
That's awesome. So there's a terrible triple homicide that's happened, and Karen, a big thing for her is like, well, was Jack part of this at all? And basically, like, even though she could arrest Glenn, I mean, it's kind of a bad move, because what she should do as a law enforcement, is basically arrest him and then turn him over to Ray Cruz. But basically, when she hears that Jack wasn't involved and that she knows that Glenn wasn't really involved and she knows who did it, she just lets him go.
Well, I think she's like, I have no evidence for him being at that scene. I think, like,
Right.
she justifies it, but if it's protocol, she should have arrested him, but I think she realizes it's like she's an out-of-town cop. It's flimsy evidence, so I don't really have anything on him now.
He bounces. Glenn is gone, and we wish him well. Jack and Buddy show up, and they start talking with Maurice, and basically they're worried that, well, if Glenn escapes, if Glenn's gone, he could go to the cops, he could say something, but nope. Maurice says not to worry. Glenn thinks the plan is to do it in a few days, so we're going to do it tonight. And they decide, okay, let's give this a shot. There's $5 million here that we could get our hands on.
There's one other thing about Maurice I wanted to mention was they say that he was a part of Young Boys Incorporated, which was like the biggest, most extreme group of drug dealers in the 80s. And funny connection to my band is that one of our former practice spaces was in a room in a marijuana grow operation in this very desolate kind of neighborhood of Detroit that's like post-industrial, so like just big open stretches of like empty factories and stuff. But it was owned by the guy who ghost wrote the Young Boys Incorporated book, which was the autobiography of the leader of Young Boys Incorporated, Butch Young. So in the room where we practiced, there was multiple pallets of this book. And when we got the tour, the guy showing us the room was like, yeah, you can grab this book if you want. So everyone in my band read this book, and this is another one where I would, if Elmore was alive, I'd give him this. It is like the most shocking read where the guy's in prison multiple times, but he's confessing to murders that he hasn't been busted for. It's like stuff like that where you're like, I can't even believe that he would publish this. Like, he's telling about the first guy he killed where he's like hiding out all night in a garbage can. Like, oh my God. It's like completely wild.
We'll have to check that out and the Swedish version of that book. So they're going to go out to, I believe, Bloomfield Hills.
That's right.
Go break in, and they have a truck that is a repair truck, and they're going to sort of get someone to answer the door and break their way in. But in the meantime, Karen calls her dad for advice, and basically he's just like, this guy wasted his life. What's going on? And she's really aware of like where things are at, where this is headed.
Oh, they reference the Stockholm Syndrome thing again in this conversation, where Marshall says, when they're putting the cuffs on Olafson, you want him to see you. And then he says, does seeing him cleaned up wearing a suit change the fact he's a loser, guy who's wasted his entire life?
Yeah, it's rough, but we also are learning that, the more we know about Snoopy and what we've seen him do and the people he works with, this is not a good move for Jack and Buddy. Maurice tells Moselle, like, hey, you're going to get this reward money for Jack because you're going to tell him that he's at this address and he's dead. So we know what Maurice's plan is, right away. And she's scared, and she remembers that she has Karen's card, and, she's going to try to, like, get out of it. And then we get to the point of the podcast where I get to ask the question I've been thinking about this entire time, and that is, Alex, did you ever do any house sitting for Elmore?
No.
What?
Why would you assume? Why? Yeah.
Well, because we get to Dick Ripley's house, which is in a really nice part of Detroit, and there's a young man named Alexander who opens the door.
No, it was not me.
Okay, here's the other question I wanted to ask you. Did you ever hook up with Elmore's housekeeper?
No, again, sorry to disappoint you, Judd.
Well, you really disappointed the housekeeper because Ripley's not in town. Ripley's in Florida, but someone named Alexander is house sitting, and he's there with Midge, the housekeeper, and they have been carrying on. They have been having a voracious affair, and Jack and Buddy, like they tell her, they all will go in, and they're interrogating. They're going through the house. It's a huge house. They don't know where to find any of these things. They know that Kenneth is there, and this is not gonna end well. They tell Midge to hide. They try to help out Alex.
It's getting more and more bleak as
it's getting rough.
They're not funding money. They realize that the guys they're with are really bad, they're not in a good situation. Jack says, it says, Foley saw himself playing out the end of his life and was quiet, watching it happen scene by scene. It's another point where kind of fate is catching up to Jack.
Yeah.
He's realizing that, like, oh my God, I really wish things were different.
It started off bad. It's only getting worse. Moselle calls Karen and tells her what's going on, where Jack is going to be. Karen calls Ray Cruz. They're going to head over there together. They know what's going down. But nothing is going to happen until they find the money, and they can't find the money. And they get to the point where it's like, well, the guy's got a lot of good food. And
well, that's the saddest part, where Snoopy's like, yeah, we'll look in the freezer, the refrigerator, take what you want. It's like, oh my God, that's all they've got, from $5 million to, like, whatever's in the freezer.
Frozen pizza. Yeah, it's rough. And they know that, they know Kenneth finds the maid, and they know that Kenneth is probably going to try to rape the maid. Buddy goes to help her.
I like, Jack tries to give Buddy an out. He's like, why don't you get out of here?
Yeah.
He's like, this is, my fate's done, but, like, you're my friend. Why don't you take off? And Buddy's like, no.
Yeah.
He sticks with him.
Buddy stays. Maurice tries to make a move, and Jack shoots him. They go to get the maid, and Kenneth shoots Buddy, and Buddy with a shotgun, and Buddy's gone. Jack shoots Kenneth, and then the cops show up. And this is just where this book starts, and all these sweet, fun, light moments, and then Buddy is just brutally shot.
Oh, yeah.
All of these people are dying.
Which I'm very thankful that the adaptation, Scott Frank blessed us with Buddy making it out alive, because it really is like such a sad, like, oh, his loyal good friend is just like gunned down.
Yeah, and because he was loyal, and
but even Jack shooting Snoopy has kind of a callback to Hombre. It's something that Elmore liked to do a lot, which was, instead of the people talking endlessly, he doesn't want to do like the James Bond thing where the bad guy has a whole speech, and he just he has Foley holding the gun, and Snoopy says, "Do you know how to use that?" And he says, "No, not really." And then he shoots him, and then Buddy says, later he says, "Oh, did he pull on you?" And he said, "No, he was thinking about it."
Right.
That's it. It's a dishonorable way to shoot someone in most books, and yet we're like, all right, thank God he did that.
It doesn't help Buddy, unfortunately. And then Jack's alone in the house, and he knows Karen's there, and he puts the ski mask over his head. He wants Karen to kill him.
Well, he's said multiple times throughout the book he'd rather die being shot like a dog than go back. Die as a free person versus
shot on the street versus shot from a guard tower.
Exactly.
And but she's not going to do it. She shoots him in the leg. He gets arrested. Karen calls Marshall, and it's over. He's like, my tough babe. This is a hell of a book. It's a tough way to end the book. It's in a lot of ways it's the inverse of Rum Punch. Well, I don't know if it's exactly the inverse, but in both cases, spoiler alert, everybody, these guys in Swag, it's really Stick that we like more at the end. It doesn't work out for them, and these guys, we like both of them a lot, and it doesn't work out for them.
I know, but the amount of times that bank robbers are described as like the stupidest guys,
Right, exactly.
I think Elmore looked Foley, and he's different. That. He's not your average bank robber, but even still, it's like, he's made these decisions. It's like a lifetime of bad decisions catching up to him.
This is a hell of a book. Rereading it.
There is a sequel, a semi-sequel too. So I always find it fascinating, because this was what Elmore would reference sometimes when people would say, if there's a film adaptation, do then you picture the character as the actor? And he would say, yeah. He's like, yeah, from now on, whenever I think of Jack Foley, it's George Clooney. So the entire time writing Road Dogs, which is where Foley comes back, it wasn't for a while that he wrote Road Dogs, but, that Clooney's in his head the whole time when he's writing that.
That's an interesting book, and we're going to get to that. We got to talk about La Brava first, because there's another great character.
Well, and if we're gonna, there's also Don Navarro from writing the rap in that as well.
Yes.
So we might have to do and then to read that one, we might have to start with Pronto. So
So there's a lot. There's a
I
lot
think
to
Road
get to.
This is going to be a little down the road, but we'll get to it.
Something else we will be getting to in a future episode will be the adaptation of Out of Sight, directed by Steven Soderbergh, written by Scott Frank, who we were so lucky to get to talk to in our last episode, and produced by Stacey Scher, among many other great producers. And we are hoping to get to speak with Stacey before too long, and perhaps even other people who were involved in the movie. So we will be getting into Out of Sight, the movie, before too long.
How would you rate the book in terms of the other ones we've read? Would you slot this higher or lower?
It's tough. So our recap, our basically what we've done so far. We've done Rum Punch, which became Jackie Brown. We did Hombre. We did Swag, and we did Touch. I'd put this a notch. I'd put this after Swag. I think this would be of the 5 we've done. I would say this is my second favorite.
Okay.
I'd go Swag, then Out of Sight, then Touch, then Rum Punch, then Hombre. And those are kind of in the same, sort of. I mean, those are very different, but what about you?
I'd slot it more towards the middle. I'm still leading with Swag, then Rum Punch. Then I think I would put Out of Sight, Hombre, Touch. So different lists, but I'm always fascinated by whose favorites or which ones. So I know there's a contingent of people who think Out of Sight is the top book, which I think it's got a lot going for it.
Oh, I think it's true.
I think it's interesting though. Reading it again is there's clearly like a question mark with like why Jack wants to do the hit at Ripley's house, because he says multiple times that he's like a career bank robber and that's what he does, and yet he drives across the country and does this home invasion where the details are sketchy and he doesn't trust anybody. And clearly Scott Frank was wondering the same things when he basically invented a whole new motivation, which I think, makes a lot of sense why you would want to add motivation, because that's like a big question mark in the book. So I think because of that, I don't think it stops me from enjoying the book a lot. It's just I don't think it's quite as complete of a story as some of the other ones we've read.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think there's a couple of questions I have like that, but I think that the things that I enjoy, just sort of lift it up, and it's great. All right, we've done our dynamic rankings. We have covered the book. We've touched on the movie. Alex, thank you for taking the time. This was a lot of fun. Thanks to everybody listening.
Thanks
we will
to you,
be back
Judd.
with you again. Yeah, no, my pleasure. We'll be back very soon.
And we'll do Cuba Libre next episode. Elmore's historical epic.
Going back 100 years in time to the destruction of the Maine and all the chaos that ensued.
And we'll touch on the Coen brothers script. They were going to adapt Cuba Libre between Fargo and The Big Lebowski. They wrote a script for Cuba Libre, and I found it, and we're going to talk about it. It's going
to be fun.
I mean, I'm really excited to read that. So love the Coen brothers, and imagine what could have been.
It's going to be a fun one. Looking forward to that. We will we'll be back soon on the Elmore Leonard Podcast.
See you later, Judd.
Take it easy. The Elmore Leonard Podcast is produced and edited by Judd Rubin. Music by Greg Ahee. Hosted by Judd Rubin and Alex Leonard. Executive produced by Peter Leonard. Copyright 2025, Elmore Leonard Inc. Please visit us at elmoreleonardofficial.com or send us an email at hello@theelmoreleonardpodcast.com.